Hello, my name is Dean, and welcome to my channel where I talk about the Golden State Warriors of the National Basketball Association. If you're a Dubs fan or just a general NBA fan that likes to tune into the daily happenings of the Golden State Warriors, please consider pressing that subscribe button. Also, like, comment, turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. Okay, so one thing I want to talk about in the grand scheme of things with Golden State Warriors fans, and especially going into the 2025-26 season, is that I just can't stand how certain Warriors fans view certain players of this team or don't take into consideration their actual skill sets or what they're placed on the team to do. And it really bothers me that for a team that has been spoiled with, an embarrassment of riches of great utility, role players, glue guys that bring competitive teams together and increase win totals by doing so, for a team that's had guys like Sean Livingston and Andre Iguodala and David Lee and Andrew Bogut and Leandro Barbosa, all these kinds of guys. It doesn't make sense for me how current day Golden State Warriors fans can view guys like Moses Moody, like Brandin Podziemski, as not being as valuable as they should be because they can't score as efficiently, or they can't do this as great, or they don't shoot 42% from three, and not realizing, and oh, Gary Payton II, a guy that I forgot in that kind of great utility player conversation. These are players that were not drafted to the Golden State Warriors for the specific reason of, oh yeah, they can score the ball at a high rate or they can defend at a high rate. These guys are Swiss Army knives. And I feel like Warriors fans don't realize that not every draft pick, number one, not every pick can be a home run or an all-star. Like Andre Iguodala, a lot of people view him as this unreachable standard, or at least a lot of Golden State Warriors fans feel like that. But we have to think about Andre Iguodala as when he got to Golden State, this was way past his potential all-star years, and he specifically took a back seat with the Warriors to hone in on his defensive skills even more than he already did and to make them a more competitive championship contender. The thing that Andre Iguodala did was he contributed in a myriad of ways, and that's exactly how I see guys like Moses Moody, like Brandin Podziemski contributing to this team now and in the future. Okay, the main point of this video is that fans have been so quick to call out guys like Brandon Podziemski because maybe they don't knock down threes at the highest clip, or they just come out and flatly say that he sucks on both ends of the floor, that he can't score, he can't pass, he can't defend, he's too short, he can't stop anybody. Even though the numbers, the advanced stats, all of those kinds of metrics will tell you the exact opposite. That a guy like Brandon Podziemski has become one of the more, I won't say elite, but one of the better perimeter defenders specifically for his size, not even just his position, but his size as a guy that's like borderline 6'2" at the guard position in the NBA. In his rookie season in 23-24, he led the league in drawn charges. That has to count for something. And number one, if that doesn't tell you just how hard and how gritty he plays every single night, and that itself brings value to this Golden State Warriors team, then I can't tell you what you are supposed to be looking for in pods, because you're just completely not taking into account his actual skill set. Brandon Podziemski is maybe the I won't say he's the hardest working player on this Warriors team because that's not really feasible. But Brandon Podziemski is playing 100 miles an hour at all times, skying for key offensive rebounds. Again, despite his stature, he is just always the first one on the floor fighting for loose balls. And then when it comes to the offensive side of the floor, he's a guy that's used as sort of a calming mechanism. And when you give the ball to him, it's almost like he has this kind of, you feel a semblance of security when Brandon Podziemski is handling the ball, as if he's a veteran, like he's been in the league a decade already, but he hasn't. And that's just how he came into the league, with that kind of calmness and responsibility. And he just came in with like a veteran's mindset. And that's how the higher ups of the Warriors organization has viewed him so far. They don't view him as this guy that can put up gaudy offensive numbers that's going to give you 25 points a night. That's not what he was brought to this Warriors team to do. And if that's what you're expecting from Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody and guys like that, even guys like Jonathan Kuminga right now, though he's probably viewed as the top of the top in terms of the Warriors' young guys, if you're looking for 23 to 25 points a night out of Brandon Podziemski, you are sorely missing the point of who he is as a player. And this same exact point can be said for Moses Moody. I've seen countless comments on my TikTok and things. Shameless plug. Follow the TikTok at Dean Simon Hoops. Seen countless comments on my TikTok saying that Pod should be traded, that Moody should be traded, even though these guys have barely got a chance to figure out who they are as players. Sure, we have the rough makeup of who they're going to be throughout the course of their careers, but we haven't seen them be able to take full advantage of their skill sets or even develop into guys that they're really going to be, if that makes any sense. Like a guy like Moses Moody, I think he's going into year 4 or year 5 already, and he's still like 23 or 22 years old. Moses Moody has barely grown into the player that he's ultimately going to be. Do I see Moses Moody being an all-star for this Golden State Warriors team? Probably not. And if he is, wow, what a story. But even if it's the case that Moses Moody or Brandin Podziemski never makes an all-star team, these guys have the natural intangibles and natural abilities to help this Warriors team compete, especially alongside Steph and Draymond and Jimmy Butler in this era where they're trying to get the most out of them possible before those guys kind of ride off into the sunset. Moses Moody was brought to this team with the vision that he could be a great two-way player and a great connective piece, not necessarily a guy that you're relying on for the brunt of your scoring duties. Although he was brought on to be a consistent three-point shooter, he's going to be a good catch and shoot guy. Maybe little by little over time he'll start to develop more as a ball handler. Same thing with Brandon Podziemski. But at the peak of their powers, they were not brought in with the idea that they're going to be running the league. Maybe Joe Lacob said that Brandon Podziemski could be an all-star, but even then, that's even for him, that's a little bit looking too far ahead at things and not really taking into account who he is as a player. Um, Moses Moody, for what I think, could be this generation's Andre Iguodala on the Warriors with a consistent three-point jump shot. And that's not to say that he's necessarily going to reach all defensive caliber defense and that he's going to be the most athletic dunker of all time and things like that. No, we're talking about intangibles. We're talking about winning qualities. And that's what the Warriors saw in these guys. These guys were not meant to put up 20 a night. And if that's what you're expecting from Moses Moody or Brandon Podziemski, night in and night out, you're missing the point. You don't understand why these guys are deployed out there in certain lineups and the fact that these guys are great like plus minus players and that they impact huge runs that the Warriors go on. Again, a Warriors team that's known in the Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson especially era for going on huge runs and just completely outscoring teams. Like once the third quarter comes around, it could be tied at halftime and then the Warriors are up by 27 at the end of the third quarter. Brandon Podziemski and Moses Moody are guys that fuel those runs because of their defensive energy and their intangibles, quick feet, quick hands. They get in passing lanes, they bring down key rebounds, they push the pace and things like that. Those are the little qualities, the little like nuances and things that Warriors fans are failing to recognize. And I feel like it's almost like malpractice if you're a Warriors fan and you're thinking that because Brandon Podziemski isn't hitting six threes a night, that he sucks and that he should be traded because that's just not the case. If you look at any kind of advanced stat metric that you like, especially for Podziemski throughout I'll admit he wasn't great through the first half of last year, but post All-Star break last year, he was putting up 15, 6 and 3, shooting 48%, 43% from 3, 80% from the free throw line, and his defensive rating and things like that were blowing guys like Dyson Daniels, who was runner up for the defensive player of the year, out of the water. Dyson Daniels had like a 114 defensive rating throughout the course of the season. Brandon Podziemski post All-Star break was at a 105.6. These are numbers that can't be ignored, but of course the casual fan is not going to be pouring through the data on NBA.com advanced stats to find that Brandon Podziemski was one of the more elite perimeter defenders in the NBA post All-Star break last year. Those are things that they're failing to see. They'll watch one game where he goes 2 for 11 and misses all of his 6 attempts from 3, and then that's the consensus. That's the vision of what Brandon Podziemski is. And I don't know if it's just because that there's a lot of Warriors fans that are from different parts of the country that don't get to view all of their games through a local network or something, and they don't have the opportunity to watch every single game. If that's the case, then maybe I could understand if you're not in a position to view every second of Warriors basketball and you can only watch those certain things. But even just looking through the box scores and looking through the highlights, you can find that Pods impacts the game and Moody impacts the game in way more areas and different avenues than just scoring or just defense. The point is that these guys can do a little bit of everything. They're not supposed to be masters of any certain skill, though they can definitely one day develop to be. The point is these guys are still so young. They have barely even broached the true potential of who they could be. And you have Warriors fans 3 years into their career saying that they should be thrown onto the trade block and just and whisked away because they had maybe one half season that was bad. And even though they completely made up for it in the second half, nope, from what I saw, they're just they need to be cast away. It doesn't make sense, and especially considering the recent history of this Warriors team, considering that these are the guys that they're trying to target in the draft to try and help Steph extend his prime and extend his championship window. This is it. These are the guys that they're looking for. I don't really understand viewing Podziemski as a guy that should be a trade candidate, viewing Moody as a guy that should be a trade candidate. Because the thing is with Moody, I can understand with Pods that he might do more negative things. Maybe he'll have more embarrassing turnovers. Maybe he'll shoot even worse from three. He'll go 1 for 7 when Moses would go just like 2 for 5 or something like that. He'll have more egregiously bad stat lines. Podziemski will. But why Moses Moody? Moses Moody never does anything spectacularly bad. He'll just miss a shot or get blown by every once in a while. And those things aren't necessarily points in the game that you could look at as, oh man, remember when Moody uh, didn't like finish that one layup. He doesn't do anything that's too egregious. Pods sometimes can get more out of control than others. But for either of these guys, it still doesn't make sense to consider either of them trade candidates for the Warriors, especially this early into their careers when we still don't really have an idea of who they can be. But that's all I mean to say with that point. But anyways, if you enjoyed that rant, whatever that just was, please consider liking, leaving a comment, subscribing, and turning on post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. See you guys in the next one.